Hello, everyone. How are you? This is Nadine Wilkins, and I wanted to jump on today. And you guys know I'm always super excited and just so grateful for every day that the good Lord just wakes me up. But I think it's so important for us to begin to have very difficult conversations. And I'm here on this live today, and I know that some people are not going to really care for or appreciate the information I'm about to share, but I'm going to share it because I believe that it will make a difference I think it'll make a difference for people, right? Where do I start? I'm going to start with George Floyd because my heart, goes out to his family. My heart goes out to our country. And what we all saw, we can never unsee. And it's something that will be with us forever. And there's some people that saw the information. And for me, I honestly could not see more than a minute. Like, I was in tears. I was bawling, right? When you have an adult experience, when we see someone experience what Mr. Floyd went through, like, it changes you forever, right? And, it's hard because normally I have all the words to say, but this is just one of those situations, and just in general, right? With everything that's happening in the world today, it's just one of those situations where you really have to, number one, not look at it from your point of view, but try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. See, one of my mantras, like one thing that I always say is the one that knows it feels it, right? So, hey, thank you for joining. It's so easy to, point the finger at, look at what's happening over there, rather than to kind of turn those fingers inward and look at what's happening over here. See, the one thing I know is this: you cannot control other people. The only thing that you can control is you, right? And I think, the reason why, everyone was so upset, right? Including myself, right? And this is a conversation I had to have it with my kids. Like, I think it's important, for parents to have certain difficult conversations, right? Is just a total disregard for human life, right? Like, we're all God's children, right? We're all made in God's image, and just a total disregard for just human life, right? So that's number one. I think it's so easy to look at what's happening in the world from, what's happening to Black people in America, what's happening with the riots, what's happening. It's easy to point the finger and say, well, look at what's happening over there, rather than turning the fingers around to see, well, what could I do differently? Because I truly believe when you look the way, sorry about that, a call just came in. When you look at children and the way they operate, like, children just love one another, right? Like, they just love one another. However, I definitely stay away from the rhetoric of, I don't see color doesn't exist. Like, it does, right? Like, here in America, Black people are the only people to be enslaved, right? Like, Black, I can't blend in, right? I look the way I look. I am who I am. Hey, there is no blending in, right? There is no changing what you see. And unfortunately, when you have systems in place and when you have certain groups of people who are targeted at times, when you have people who are, when you have Black people going through some of the things that they go through. And I think what made everything just so, like, exacerbate everything is when you look at, what happened to Black people with coronavirus. And I mean, it was out there. Like me, I couldn't do the news media because it just breaks your heart, because then you start to wonder, well, why one group versus another group? Like, you fall into that. So you have, people coming off of coronavirus, right? And then you have what happened in I want to say it was Central Park with the Amy Cooper situation. And when you see people who manipulate, right? Like, I believe these are individuals. Like, these are people. When you see people who kind of use their privilege or use their situation as a weapon, as a tool to hurt other people, it's like, wow, And for Black people, you're like, it exists, but to actually see it so blatant and so like right in your face, it's like, wow, right? Now, I am not the representative for everybody. I can only speak from how things occur to me and what I've experienced, and then also what I've experienced as not only just a black woman, but also a Black woman raising 3 sons, married to a Black man, right? And for me today, we had a church huddle, which was phenomenal, and this is what kind of like opened up some of these conversations. And I share with everyone, I said, look, lately I've been posting on social media about us going on a bike ride as a family. And yes, we enjoy having new experiences as a family. And yes, I live in a great community. But at the end of the day, my boys are getting bigger, right? Like, they love it. Anyone who knows my sons will know they love people. They're huggers, kids, they just love on people, right? Anybody who knows them can attest to that, right? However, they are growing up in a world where that love will not be received. And unfortunately, when, people see my sons, because they're so much bigger for their age, people will assume that they're bigger. And I can give you guys example after example of like what that looks like the impact that has. I'll give you guys an example, and I had a chance to share this morning. We were at BJ's. My husband wasn't there. It's just me and the boys, like we normally do, going through our regular routine. And so my son, my oldest, he's 12 now. So, I want to give him more autonomy, some more leadership. And, he's 12. He's going on 13. He'll be in high school soon, right? And so I sent him to go grab the shopping cart, right? While me and the other boys, we were right there in sight. And all of a sudden, my son comes back and he is very upset. And I'm like, automatically, I'm like, what happened? Is everything okay? And I asked him what happened, and he said, hey guys, thank you so much for joining. And he said, Mom, this guy came and just took the cart from me. And, he said some really disrespectful things to me. And I'm like, automatically, like, I'm furious. And I'm like, who is this person? Because I'm like right there, but I didn't see it all transpire because he had to kind of go out to grab the cart. And so when he showed me the guy that, had this encounter with him, first thing I'm thinking in my mind, like, who, like, has an encounter with a minor, with a child, right? Like, wouldn't you have a conversation with the parent and not the child? And so what transpired was when I asked the gentleman, I said, did you take the cart? Now, guys, this may seem very trivial, but I'm just giving you a small, like, everyday example to show you how insidious things can be. And also just what we're talking Black boys, like what children go through, right? And so I asked the guy, I said, why did you do that? Like, I'm right here. Why didn't you have a conversation with me? And he said, well, your son stole the cart. I said, excuse me? We're in BJ's. How can you steal a cart in BJ's, right? And, there were other words exchanged, and it just made it so present to me that, wow, like when this guy saw my son, he didn't see a 12-year-old, right? Like he saw a Black male, right? And he came at him like he stole a cart. Like, how do you steal a cart in a BJ's in a Costco, right? And unfortunately, it is just what the experiences are like, and who, I know what it's like to, stay up and wait for my husband to get home, right? And vice versa, right? I know what it's like. And guys, if you have any comments, definitely chime in. Thank you for joining, Maria. Thank you, TT Martha, for joining. Thank you, Bruce, for joining. Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for joining. Thank you, Layana, for joining. Like, I want this to be open dialogue, safe place where you can openly share and know. However, though, I do want to preface it with this. If you do want to share, before you share, one, think twice about what you're going to say before you're going to say it. And number two, put yourself in someone else's shoes. And when you're able to do those two things, I'm telling you, you can accomplish so much, right? So I can tell you guys countless situations. I'm in college, right? And I remember my brother was actually driving me back to school. I went to, Drew University, and, we're driving in his car and he got off the wrong exit and we end up in a town. I want to say it was like Powder Mill or something out there. And now, mind you, we have two. It was my brother and his best friend in the car driving, and I'm in the back, and they're driving me back to school. And I remember when we got pulled over, like feeling like, oh my God, like that anxiety, like, Lord, please don't let anything happen to us, and that I can get back to school. And, when the officer pulled us over. Now, I'm going to preface this, guys. I have friends, business partners, colleagues, family members that are in law enforcement, and there are people that are doing the right things. What happens is when people don't do the right things, that's when lives are lost, right? And so the officer is like, well, mind you, I'm already worried because my brother has a Black Power shirt on, right? And my brother can attest to this. He's on Facebook, right? He can attest to this. And, you have two really, big Black males, and we're in this town, and the officer's like, well, what are you doing here? We're like, my brother's like, well, I'm driving my sister back to school. We got off on the wrong exit by mistake. And the officer was like, well, why would you, be going to that town? The town is closed. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, I'm in college. So I've learned a certain amount up until that point to know, like, a town isn't closed, right? Like, it's not like a quarantine where a town is closed. And I just really, I know what that meant, but I really couldn't, I was just like, wow, like, I couldn't imagine that conversation happening to someone else, right? Like, sorry about that. Another call came in. So I really couldn't imagine other people experiencing that, right? Like, I knew why, people know why they're experiencing certain situations. And I think it's so easy to just, point the finger and look at what it is other people are doing rather than to do the hard thing. And the hardest thing is to kind of look introspectively and to look inside of you, because if kids can love each other, the only way we get to this point is when it is learned behavior, is taught behavior, right? And that's why the situations like the Amy Cooper in the park, that's why it's just like, so devastating, because you're like, wow, like, how could someone like use where they are to purposely hurt someone else, right? So, I mean, those are some of the thoughts that I had in my mind, and, definitely want to start those conversations, because I think it just needs to happen. It's time, right? I'm definitely grateful for the churches right now that are, having these difficult conversations, because there are some places where, people are just like, it doesn't exist, but it does. It does exist. It does. Racism does have an impact. And this isn't, me just, how do I put this? Unfortunately, when we decide to have a conversation about race in America and decide to address some really difficult situations, the first thing that's thrown out is, oh, they're using the race card, right? Like, you can't hide being who you are. And I mean, you look at the numbers, right? You look at the numbers of the unproportionate number of, African Americans impacted by COVID-19. You look at the unproportionate number of jails being made up of Black people. Like, literally, I'm on social media and I saw this America's Got Talent, and you have a gentleman, Archie, I think his name was Archie Williamson, spent 37 years in jail for a crime that he didn't even commit. 37 years of his life gone for something that he did not do. And thank God for DNA evidence to prove that, there was no fingerprints of his there. And it ended up it was someone else, and DNA evidence proved it. Can you imagine that? And this happens time and time again. So this is just this is where I stand, right? And where I stand is we need to love one another, right? And what's happening in the world right now, it's not okay. And what makes me feel really great is to see the amount of people who are standing up to say that it's not okay, because it takes something to stand up and say it's not okay. It takes something to help somebody else, right? It takes something to not just record when you see things happening, but to actually step in and be a good Samaritan to help somebody else out, right? It takes something to do those things. And that's where it is. Hey, Carrie, thank you for joining. Yes, his name is Archie. His story brought tears to my eyes too. Yes. So, but this happens, right? It happens. And when it happens, and it happens over and over again, but no one wants to really address the root causes. You can put a Band-Aid on a problem, right? Or you can Band-Aid a situation, but soon enough, it's going to blow. Like you're going to have to address it. It's kind of like dealing with an illness, right? If you just treat the symptoms, right? It's still there. It's still there. And this is the time where we need to look to really eradicate what's happening. And, I'm sorry. If I have any friend right now, and if you don't agree with me, you can unfriend me, all of that stuff, right? That is, just not really open or willing to have the conversation, and also post things that I believe are just disrespectful. Like, one, I get to choose, right? I can block, you can do the same exact thing. It's just, this isn't the time, right? This isn't the time to point the finger and just say, well, I can't believe those people, right? Like, now is the time to really have conversations about real solutions. And not to just point the finger and blame, but to really put real solutions on the table. And this live was just to have a place where people can share that information and, support one another, and also really have those real conversations. Like, that's where we need to be right now. Now is not the time to not address the elephant in the room, but to really take action and address the issues at hand. And no one's going to agree on how to address it, right? But like I said, the one that feels it actually knows it. So that is where I am right now. I definitely will jump back on to continue on this conversation. You guys can like, share, comment, but let's keep this going. And I'm going to say what I believe, which is we all need to be more childlike, right? When you see children hugging each other, loving on each other, caring for each other, it's real. Everything else after that point is learned behavior. And unfortunately, when you're in a system that where certain things will happen and people are not held accountable, it makes it very hard. Let me just read that. With all of my being, I stand with you. Oh, thank you, Gary. I stand with you. We need to be the change all the time. There's no solution. I'm reading your comment, Carrie. There's no solution, love, and respect for our fellow woman or man and blame. It isn't. It isn't. You don't get anywhere where you just blame other people and just point the finger of, look at what's happening over there, because the bottom of the line is stuff that affects everybody, right? If it affects one person, it affects us all. And so I really appreciate you guys. I love you. And, these aren't great times, but I know that we will be able to stand together and persevere. And this is just the first of many. So take care, guys. God bless. Support any way that you can. The change starts with you. Take care, guys. God bless.